Actually, I totally agree with the idea of children helping at home because I think that by doing the household chores, they learn about the responsibility. We know that they are at the cognitive development stages, and this stage is very critical for them because everything they learn becomes a part of their identity and it could be part of their life too. So it is important, I think, that to make them rule-centered person and they become responsible for whatever they are doing. On the other hand, I think that it increases the feeling of cooperation at home and it teaches them that they can do everything by cooperating and by helping each other. And we know that they can learn about the lifelong skills, which could be really asset for them for the rest of their life. They can learn about the basics of everything such as cleaning or cooking and other household chores, which are really important part of everyday life. I disagree with such idea because I think that it is true there is less gap age between young teachers and the students can enjoy mutuality and interaction much more with their energetic teachers, but we shouldn't take for granted the idea of the experience. I mean that experience is something that can gain only through the years of practice and teaching. Teachers who are experienced gain their experience from working with different kind of students, different kind of groups and settings, and they learn much more about the human factors such as the individual needs, about the individual differences, and these sort of things can not only gain from the university study and needs practice and experience working with different kind of settings and the students at the school. So I think that it is not true to have the teachers of young age but not experienced one. Actually, I can say I agree with such statement because I think that we have learned many things from copying and imitating the good behavior. And if we consider the proportion of the things that we have learned from the good things, we could understand that the proportion of those ones that we learned from making mistake was really less and not important. I mean, it is true that we have learned some big lessons from our mistakes, but those ones were only in the case of that we had really bad effect and results from that, such as those ones that cost an army for us, or we had big injuries and we just learned from that. So I mean that most of the time in our life we have learned from copying and imitating good behaviors rather than by making mistakes. Actually, each idea has its own advantages and disadvantages, but in my own case, I prefer studying in a group to get prepared for the examination. I mean that when you're working with a group of students, I know that I have a schedule, organization, and also there is much more for sharing. When we are working with other students in the settings such as the libraries or houses, we know that we aren't interrupted by other ones and we are doing something together and we are responsible for each other's learning, and sometimes we can learn better from narrating and teaching each other even. And we know that when we are working with others, we have strict rules about attending in a place on time, about when to finish, about when to have the break time, and all those sort of things gives much more organization to our study. Actually, I'm not much into news and I don't follow news a lot. And when I turn on the TV, I prefer to watch my favorite movie and movie series rather than watching the news, because watching the news gives me really bad impression about my world. I feel depressed and stressful about the world around myself, because every time that I turn on the TV news, I hear about the catastrophic and breaking news of, I don't know, famine, terrorism, war, and all these sort of things have really negative effect on my spirit and my condition. So the last time that I decided to stop watching those ones, I really felt good, and I think that it is better for me not to follow that and just grab the headlines through the social media networks, or even sometimes just occasionally follow them on TV news. Actually, I suggest teachers to motivate their students toward teamwork because it has really good positive energy for students when they are working in the positive atmosphere of cooperation with each other. Actually, the findings of the latest studies have shown that students learn from each other better because they are kind of facilitator for the content that teacher taught to them. Actually, most of the students know about how to learn something because they are looking from the student side and their own viewpoint is totally different from the teacher one. So they can learn very easily from each other, and this is really good idea for them. Also, it increases the feeling of responsibility among some students who will be responsible for teaching other ones, and it can kind of homogenize the students with different skills and different talents, and it can make them in a kind of balanced kind of learning. Challenging issue at the workplace, and many policymakers and authorities at the workplace really don't know what to do, and the history of such policies that had been done already in some companies actually haven't reached any reliable findings, and most of the time they complain about the staff's negative attitude toward their companies. So actually I think that there could be such other alternative methods to do that, such as limiting the time that they can use their mobile phones at the workplace. I mean that during the break time they can use it, or also we can control them by kind of actually cameras or sudden meetings from the authority. Actually, the idea of getting help from private teacher or professor might not be suitable for most of the students since it is costly, and we know that most of the students can't afford such opinion and idea. We know that students know much more about each other's problems because perhaps they had already experienced such things in their own life, and in their academic life they faced with such situations, and they learned about how to deal with this, so they can share about how to deal with such problems much better and more practical than the professor. I think that students have the same perspectives toward the world, and their viewpoints toward the problem is totally different from the teacher ones, and it could be really useful and practical to learn from the group of students rather than relying on the private teacher.